Okay, I have moved the entire template to Symfony. I've also prepared all the links in my application, and what is left is the interaction with the database. The first thing I need to do is to create a new task, but I don't have database yet. So I need to create a database connection first. Let's first install a package that is going to communicate with the database by using Doctrine ORM. This is going to be used in my Symfony application. Composer require Doctrine. I click Enter. And after installation, I see that I need to change one file with the proper database parameters. I don't need to care about this. I need to provide the database credentials in the .env file. So let's open this file. And in XAMPP, the default database user is root. And he has no password. And let's say, for example, I want the database be called to-do list. Let's save it. And the command to create database in Symfony, bin console. If it doesn't work in your system, write here dot and slash. And you might need to type also PHP here. In my case, I do this like so. So this is bin console, doctrine, database, create. And the database was created. If I refresh here, I see that I have my database, but with no tables yet. So now I want to create tables, but I'm not going to do this manually, but I'm gonna use entity files in Symfony, which are responsible for communicating with the database in Symfony. Entities in Symfony are like models in other frameworks. So let's create our first entity. Bin console make entity. And the name of the entity, task. And what I can do here, I can provide, among other things, column names for my database. But without the ID, this is going to be automatically generated. So in to-do application, I need a table with a title column. In the title column, there's gonna be stored our task title. And we see that the default value is the string. If I click the question mark, I see what other types I can write here. For title, this is going to be the string type. And the default length 255. I click enter and the title cannot be empty, so I click the default value, which is no. And I also want the status of the task. And the status is gonna be a Boolean type. So completed or not completed. If in the column is false or null, then the task is not completed. But if in the column is true or 1, it means that the task is completed. And let this field to be empty at the beginning, because if I add a new task, it is default not completed, which is represented by null in the database. So let's change here to yes. And I don't need more fields, so I click enter to leave this command prompt. And after that, Symfony has all it needs to create a table in the database. We have task entity. We see that we have the ID generated automatically. And these are information thanks to which Symfony will generate a table with in the database. We have title and status. We have methods setting the title, getting the title, setting the status and getting the actual status of the task. And now, in order to create a table in the database, I need to do two things. The first is a migration file. I create migrations in this way. Bin console make migration. and a migration file was created in the folder. This is simply code for creating a table in the database. We see that there is gonna be created the task table. Task corresponds to the name of my entity, which is also task. If I wanted, I could change the table name to be plural using an appropriate option in this place, but I'm going to leave it as it is. In the advanced part of this course, I'm going to show you how to use additional options here to change, for example, a table name to be plural. And what I want to do now is to make database table using migration code. So bin console doctrine migrations migrate. I click yes, and this made a table in my database. I see that I have title, status, and ID was generated automatically. ID is auto increment and primary key. And now I'm going to supplement a create method in the controller. I'm not gonna use it, so I can delete it. At first, let's open index.html twig file. Here I need to get the value of this HTML form element. This element should have some name. So here I need to provide the name attribute. And let's call it title. And how to get the value of the sent HTML form element? By using request object in Symfony. So request, and obviously I need to import this request object. Like so. And let's try to read the value of this HTML element. How can we do this? Request object contains, among other things, get and post data. I am interested here in post data because I sent the form with post method. And how to read this data? We type request and get, and as an argument the name of our HTML form, which is title. Let's save it and see if it is going to work. Refresh. It works. Okay, so let's make also here some validation, because I don't want the HTML form to be sent if the field is empty. I want some string to be here in order to make this data valid on the server. But if the field is empty, I don't want this data to be processed on the server. I'm going to do this in a very simple way. In the advanced part of this course, where I will be creating video application, I'm going to show you more advanced features about HTML forms and its validation. But here, let's do this in a simplified way. At first, let's assign the value of our title field to title variable. I can also wrap it with a trim function, which is going to remove free spaces from the left and right side of the string. And now, if title is empty, then I want to redirect back to the task list. I don't want the further code to be executed. In Symfony, I redirect back by return this and redirect to route. And here within the parentheses type the name of the route. And the list of all tasks is to-do list. So I redirect back in this way. Let's save it and check if it is going to work. I'm gonna type the correct value. It works. And now I'm gonna leave it empty. And I was redirected back, so it works. And now I'm going to use my entity, which we created. The first thing I need to do is to create an object which is responsible for saving objects in the database. So entity manager equals get doctrine and get manager. This is the object responsible for saving other objects in the database. Here there are possible other methods, for example get repository, which is responsible for making select queries in a simplified abstracted way without the need to write a full query in SQL language. Here we can also give get connection method and many other methods, but more about this in the advanced part of this course, where I will be creating a website for video subscription. And now when I have it, first I need to create a new task object. It is needed if I want to create a new task. So new entity task, and in this case my editor imported the task entity automatically by using use statement. In my case it was done automatically. If you don't have such functionality in your editor, you have to do it manually. And this is the first step. Let's take a look at the entity. How we save the title of the task in the database? By using setTitle method. I don't need to use setStatus because the status of the task is null by default, which means that at the beginning my task is not completed, nullable true. What I am interested in is only setTitle method in this case. So setTitle, and here I'm gonna do this, and now I want to save the effect in the database, and I'm gonna do this in this way. Task persist, and here my task object and task flash. Actual saving in the database is done by this line of code. This line of code only prepares for the saving in the database. So in case we save only one entity in the database, it may look unnecessary, but in case more complicated database operations, here for example I could have other entities and write here other things. So this only prepares for the saving to the database, and persist could also be many, and later flash command would save all records in the database. So in case more complicated operations in the database, it would make more sense, but even with the very simple operation we have to do this like that. But here there should be obviously entity manager, not the task, which is the object that I created here. And after a task is successfully created, I can redirect back to the route that represents the list of all tasks. Let's save it and check how it works. For now I have empty database. I see that my validation worked. And let's write something. Let's check if it was saved. And we see that our task was saved in the database.